you'll be able to listen in on the panel that we gave entitled The Exotic Aliens of Star Trek The Original Series at DragonCon 2019.
This is Bill Blair, the Guinness World Record holder for the most special effect makeup characters portrayed in a career. Watch Star Trek? Yeah, you've seen me. Check it out, and thanks for listening to StarPodTrek.
So we do want to mention that this year's DragonCon charity is the American Heart Association, and DragonCon will match up to $100,000 raised during the con. And you can donate in the box passed around the room, or you can text to AHA 2019 to 44321. Every donation helps our community make a difference. And we are...
I'm Nayar.
And I'm Kovora. And this is what you see on the screen. That is us in our Andorian. Exotic Aliens of Star Trek The Original Series, presented by members of the Imperial Xeno Legion. We are members of the Klingon Assault Group and also Starfleet Command, Starfleet International, a lot of clubs. But one thing you might not know about the Klingon Assault Group, they have their own division that's called the Imperial Xeno Legion, which takes not just Klingons. The Imperial Xeno Legion is for any alien. So any alien that's not, if you're not human or Klingon, if you want to do some other cosplay. So CAG is not just for Klingons.
And so later on tonight, you'll see us in our Andorian gear.
Now, exotic. So what does it mean to you? On Google, strikingly unusual or strange in effect or appearance, and for example, an exotic hairstyle.
What would you say is Trek's most exotic hairstyle?
Oh, that we're going to be discussing that. That's not a one-shot answer. That's...
Well, we're talking more about aliens than hairstyles, but yeah.
Exotic hairstyles. I mean, there's quite a few aliens that do have exotic hairstyles. Oh, and every time you see one, now you open the door. You're going to have to walk through it. Throughout the entire panel, we're going to be expecting your feedback on that. All right? So you have a mission. So we look around this picture. What are some of the ones that we see with regard to exotic aliens? Baby doll?
So I mean, these are just some examples. I mean, you recognize Shauna on the bottom left. I mean, that hairstyle is, one of the more outlandish ones that we've seen.
And that's the prequel to Lady Gaga.
And her baked potatoes.
Yes. Oh yeah, some people like the baked potatoes. I would not have noticed that if someone hadn't made a meme of it. But we're not really going to cover much of the Klingons, Romulans, or Vulcans in this, just because you know more about them. So we wanted to talk more about the aliens that you don't know as much about. So on the original series, Journey to Babel, and on the animated episode Yesteryear, of course, remember the Andorians. So they were seen in Journey to Babel, but after that, they were mostly background characters, right? Such as this picture from the episode Whom Gods Destroy. And you remember the Gamesters of Triskelion, where they just had an Andorian warrior. And this is also the Andorian symbol. You see that symbol with the circles going off to the side?
So we have to give Enterprise, the television series, credit for fleshing out more of the canon Andorians, as well as giving us the logo. Even though it started in TOS, it's a race of aliens that we were able to see continuously throughout the years.
We see them twice in TNG, one of which was a hologram.
In which? Oh, in TNG, yes. The holographic Andorian.
Yeah.
And so everyone remembers this Andorian, right, from Journey to Babel? Oh, yes, all right. Well, this one was the ambassador, right? This was an Andorian.
He's the ambassador in Journey to Babel.
One of the founding members. Oh, yeah, of course, the Andorians are one of the 4 founding members of the United Federation of Planets. They marry in groups of 4. He said it in that same episode you mentioned, right?
He's discussing marriage at one point in some episode.
Oh, okay. In the one where O'Brien got married, right?
That, I think so.
Okay, Data's Day, right. That's right, he did mention it. Okay. Andorian ale, just some other Andorian things that have been mentioned on the show. Andorian ale was mentioned on DS9 and on some Enterprise episodes. Andorian blues, a type of music that was mentioned in Unification. On Journey to Babel, they seem to be neutral, but on Enterprise, as we've mentioned, the Andorians became antagonists to Vulcans. I love how they developed the Andorians on Enterprise. Hashtag warrior race later became meek. If you looked at the Star Trek timeline, weren't they were warriors on Enterprise, and then later Journey to Babel was like 150 years later, and they didn't seem to be as much of a warrior race.
When they were fleshing out the Andorians in Enterprise, that it revealed a sort of xenophobic side to the Vulcans that was completely... It might have been implied because Spock's dad kind of talked down to humans in Journey to Babel, and definitely talked down to the Tellarites.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of implied that they were trash without actually saying so, but then the way they acted toward the Andorians just really cemented that idea, fully filled it out.
Good point.
It seems like the Vulcans have been they've always been arrogant, right? And especially in Enterprise, the way they treated humans. They thought they were superior, probably to every race. Most Andorians were blue-skinned with white or silver hair, but do you remember the Enar from Enterprise? An offshoot of the Andorians that had white skin, white hair, and they were blind and telepathic? Does this look familiar to anybody?
Now,
These
are some of the costume test shots for Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Very different, aren't they? Have you seen this guy before? This was from, was it last year or the year before? He was in the DragonCon parade.
So we see this gentleman's dressed up as Colonel Sanders with Andorian makeup on, and if you look at the bucket of chicken he's holding, it says Andorian fried chicken, and you see that the chicken is blue. So we have some cross fandoms there with the Andorians in the costuming world.
And it's especially appropriate now with the KFC in the news, whatever that was. Okay, next we have the Gorn in the episode Arena. Now, who knew the Gorn was actually voiced by Ted Cassidy, the one that played Ruck in What Are Little Girls Made Of? And, of course, we know him as Lurch on The Addams Family. And we have hashtag rubber suit makes awesome villain. Wasn't he a cool villain? Because everybody remembers him, right? He did, didn't he? And this is a picture from, there's a Star Trek book called These Are the Voyages that talked about the making of each episode. And so they said the base was a rubber suit, and they put muscle on top of it, and the feet on, like he had tennis shoes, and then they put the rubber feet on top of his tennis shoes. And the actor could only see right in front of him with that mask on. He couldn't see down.
You have a thought up here in front?
I play Star Trek Online, and the Gorn is a playable race, but you can only play as Mel in Gorn, and I was wondering if that's something you know of from extended canon, if there are female Gorn that it talks about them at all.
They're slightly larger.
That they said that in canon that the females are slightly larger?
No,
in the novels, okay. I don't remember that. I know I've seen the Gorn in some of the novels, and I think I have only seen the male Gorns as far as I can remember. That's a good question.
Technically, we never did it.
Oh, yeah, oh, okay. You don't really know. Because you just kind of assume they're male.
Yeah.
Okay. And we all remember this, right?
Kirk fighting the Gorn.
When the show was made, the mask and the voice were considered scary. We think of it as campy now. And he was actually played by 3 stuntmen, Bobby Clark, Gary Combs, and Bill Blackburn. And I know Bobby Clark he's been a guest at Star Trek Las Vegas before. He's the one who's mostly known as playing the Gorn. And they used a stuntman so that he wouldn't get tired easily, because he had to wear that suit, and it was very hot out there. They filmed in, was it Vasquez Rocks in California?
There's a Star Trek exhibit at the Experience Museum in Seattle, and that's where the mask is now. The original bridge control panel where Sulu and Chekhov sat, that's also there.
Oh, the original one.
The original one.
Okay. That's cool. Yeah, we've seen some recreations of it. And the Gorn were mentioned by Sisko in Trials and Tribulations. Remember that episode, too. And filmed at Vasquez Rocks. And what is this from?
That's right.
Yes.
Enterprise in the Mirror Darkly.
Yes, it was the Mirror Universe Gorn. And, of course, on Discovery, that skeleton in the background is supposed to be a Gorn skeleton. But the Enterprise is supposed to take place before the original series. And on the original series, that was supposed to have been the first time any humans had encountered the Gorn. But somehow there was this Gorn skeleton there. Have we seen this picture before? I think there was a commercial, right, that William Shatner did where he was doing this with the Gorn. They were playing a video game together. So if they had met the Federation under different circumstances, do you think maybe the humans and Gorn could have been friends? Because in the episode in Arena, the Gorn turned out to be, just protecting their territory. But in the novels, they have been made out to be very aggressive. And on Enterprise as well. Has anyone seen this?
Okay, so we're looking at a brown Gorn head with a brown bodysuit. Does anybody know the reference point to that Gorn?
Mark.
Let's see, get a microphone over here. Now, that is me in the Gorn outfit a couple years ago at Dragon Con.
I'm just, my name is Mark McCrae, and I live locally out of Georgia. Originally from New York, though. I wanted to mention that I think years ago there were Amigo toys, and they made a Gorn with the brown outfit. And I think it was a revenue-saving decision not to make him green.
Yeah, this Gorn, they made the doll, it was the same body as the Klingon and costume as the Klingon Migo. But then so for the Gorn, all they did was change the head.
They took the head from the Spider-Man villain, the Lizard, and painted it brown, molded it brown, and put it on the Klingon body and marketed it as a Gorn doll. Now look at that picture. You see the TV version compared to the Migo version. How absurd is it? And then they gave him a red phaser and communicator on top of it. But guess what? If you were a kid in the 70s, you played with it and you loved it.
And Nayar here is our Migo expert too. Leadership lesson number 1: never ever forget how to make gunpowder. Hello. Gunpowder was made from sulfur, some form of carbon, such as coal or charcoal, potassium nitrate, bamboo tube, and a diamond chunk. Do you remember that? Do you think you can really make it with that? There was an episode of Mythbusters, right, where they actually tried to make gunpowder just the way Kirk did it, and do you have to see it to know what happened? It didn't work, but it was fun to try. And what is this from? Yes, Big Bang
Theory.
I think this one was a dream, right? Yes. Oh, and this is also from Big Bang Theory. Rock-Paper-Scissors-Lizard-Spock. Scissors cuts paper, paper cuts rock, rock crushes lizard, lizard poisons Spock, Spock smashes scissors, scissors decapitates lizard, lizard eats paper, paper disproves Spock, Spock vaporizes rock. And as it always has, rock crushes scissors.
Easy, isn't it?
And you remember when, was it Kripke that made Sheldon say this several times in a row? Okay, next we have the Tholians. So Kyle Riker, remember Kyle, he's the father of William Riker. Kyle Riker was a strategist advising in an ongoing conflict against the Tholians. That's one mention of the Tholians. And Sisko gave Tholian silk to Cassidy Yates. It was highly priced and difficult to obtain. And you remember Deep Space Nine, Sisko and the lady that he dated and married after a while, Cassidy Yates. And we do remember this episode with the Tholians, right? The Tholian web. And we also see the Tholian symbol there, which came from, where did that come from?
That came from some role-playing games. We're seeing a lot of things with these alien races that have been developed since the original series. Various role-playing game companies like FASA have developed symbols, background stories,
how the governments are run, because the original series didn't mention them too often. And even in the novels, some of them were virtually ignored. So up until later on in years, when Star Trek started producing more televised shows, many of these aliens were lost in the shuffle. They weren't considered important enough to give them a background story, so we relied on the data from the role-playing games.
There is a lot you could read in those Foster books. And also, even because in one of the Lost Era books, they expanded a little bit more about Kyle Riker and his involvement with the Tholians. But the one I read, they did it more as a backstory. But it was very interesting about him, if you ever want to read those Lost Era books. Now, hashtag TOS did better without CGI. Anyone agree with me here? The Tholian Web episode is the one on the bottom right. The top one is the one that was from Enterprise, where they were in the mirror universe and the Tholians did a web there. And you see the difference? It just, for some reason, maybe because I grew up with it, I like the TOS version better. And here's just a comparison of the way it looked on the original series compared to the Enterprise Tholians. When they did it on Enterprise, you see they gave the Tholians a whole body. They gave it a spider-like body because they made webs, and so it just gave the idea of making them like spiders. Next, we have Metrons. Remember them? We really don't know much about them, right? Didn't have names because this guy didn't have a name. Could transport over long distances. Oh, and what episode was this? The one with the Gorn, right? He showed up right at the end. The one in Arena was 1,500 years old. Metron Consortium, mentioned in DS9 episode Business as Usual. So there was some other mention of the Metrons later on, but they never showed them again. Hashtag this small child kicks ass, right? Remember Kirk said, well, you look like a small child. And that's when he said, I am 1,500 of your years old. He looks kind of angelic, right? Is he supposed to look like a saving angel or something? And now we have the Vians. Remember them. Dominant and controlling at first. They learned compassion, right? Remember this episode? The Empath, where they tortured McCoy. And they had the woman that Dr. McCoy named Gem, G-E-M, and she was an empath. She was the type of empath that could take on someone's pain, and then she felt the pain herself, and then it would go away after a few seconds. Lau and Thon, the names that were given to these two aliens in the closing credits, but we never heard their names in the episode. Large heads like the Telosians, which we will talk about the Telosians. But these races that could do like everything with their minds, they seem to always have the bigger heads, right? And we can call the Tribbles exotic, right? Because they're nothing like us. That's true. Yeah, wait till you get to another slide in here. So here we have Tribbles. And the name that someone came up for them, Polygeminus Grex, like a scientific Latin name. Purring, of course, Spock said the purring has a tranquilizing effect on humans. And Spock, claimed to be, immune to it, but then he strokes the Tribble. And we know the Klingons obliterated them because, why? The Tribbles hate Klingons.
So, the Tribbles ended up being an invasive species in the Klingon Empire. And, when they would get into food supplies and therefore on a transport to take it to other worlds where, the whole thing of the episode was they eat and replicate at an alarming rate. They view Tribbles the way that, 1800s farmers view swarms of locusts. It was a terrifying pest to be eradicated, or your people will starve.
Good point.
Because they also ate the food. They ate the grain in this episode, yes, and they multiplied like crazy. But they hated Klingons, remember? That was the thing. A lot cuter than locusts. Well, and that's why Uhura bought one, right? Because it was cute. Oh, so on TAS is the animated series, and of course there was an episode of them that had the Tribbles. Deep Space Nine and Discovery. You do remember Discovery having tribbles, right? There was, Lorca had one, right? And how did he only have one? Was it sterilized? I mean, they didn't take over the ship. On Enterprise, they said Phlox fed them to his pets. Did he? They were originally called Fuzzies. Oh, yeah, do you know the episode, David Gerald, who wrote the episode The Trouble with Tribbles? And he also wrote a book called The Trouble with Tribbles that was about the making of that episode. And in his original script, he called them Fuzzies instead of Tribbles. And there was actually an old sci-fi story that had just about the same thing, little furry animals that multiplied like crazy, and they were called Fuzzies. So David Gerald was told to come up with a different name. And so he wrote out a whole list of possible names, and he just settled on Tribble. He said he still preferred Fuzzies, but if he had to change it, he would use Tribbles. Now, according to the Starfleet Medical Reference Manual, the reason the Klingons and Tribbles don't like each other is because each has a strong sense of smell, and they both smell bad to each other. Actually, that's funny, because you remember on Enterprise, they said that humans smell bad to the Vulcans. So they come up with this stuff. But how could the Tribbles smell without noses? Really? So there were different sounds for the different moods of the Tribbles. I think do you remember hearing different sounds? I mean, besides the scowling sound when they didn't like the Klingons. The sound of a dove, a screech owl, balloon rubbing. They played it at different speeds and mixed the different sounds. So that's the way they were able to make the sounds on the original series. And of course we have this picture from the animated episode. What was it called? More Tribbles, More Troubles? More Trouble with Tribbles? Okay. And the Tribbles were pink in that one, right? They made them pink because... Does anyone know this story?
There were actually a lot of things in the animated series that ended up a shade of pink or purple that otherwise shouldn't have been because of one of the production crew suffering from color blindness, and nobody actually noting in words what the color should be. So that's why if you watch the animated series, you also note all the Klingons green and gold uniforms are now just purple and red.
And to me, it seems like they would just change them just because it's an animated show and you want to have more colors. But yes, because he was colorblind. And did you want to say something too? Or?
I have another theory about this.
Okay.
I work in color for a living and photo retention, and I always thought it was noteworthy that originally they were going to color Spock red to go with his ears. He would look like the devil, and when they did film tests of that makeup in black and white, it looked like a black person. That was not what Gene was trying to say. So they went with green because it looked better in black and white. Okay? So it wouldn't surprise me if the stuff that shifted to purple and pink was so that it would pop more on the televisions of the day and would be detectable in the scene on a black and white television. Because those Tribbles were tan or brown, and they were in this scene here with these dark blues, and you faded your color out to black and white, or you were watching on black and white TV, I'll bet those Tribbles would have been completely invisible.
So it's good they were painted
that was my theory when the show originally aired. I looked at it.
Makes sense.
Well, why would they do that? And we had just gotten the color TV maybe 2 years before, and I remember stuff looked really strange in black and white sometimes, and then that's the conclusion I drew as like 10 or 12-year-old.
Makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, and Star Trek was made at the time when TV was just moving over from black and white to color. And so they, that's the reason they had all the bright colors on the show, because color was a new thing then, and they wanted all the TV shows to show off these new colors. But some people still had black and white TVs.
I was watching TAS at my grandparents' on Saturday mornings, and that was black and white TV, so totally.
Yes.
Molly, and I'm from North Carolina. I was reading a story recently that Kirk's shirt, his uniform shirt, was originally green, but because of the color they were using at the time, it appeared gold. on screen, and so that's how we have like gold shirts now. So
Isn't that wild?
yeah.
Yeah, the way colors show up differently on TV than what they are like in reality. Yes. So in order to make a dribble, cut cloth in the shape of an 8 and then stuff and sew it together. That was the instructions that came from David Gerald's book, The Trouble with Tribbles. Some of them were made movable with the same parts that are inside a battery-operated barking dog toys. Remember those toys where the dog would bark? So, but that mechanism they put inside those dogs, that's what they put inside the tribbles to make them move. You know how some of them could move in the episode? They were actually moving. Yeah, it wasn't just a person moving it. Captain Archer has a beagle. Captain Picard has a fish. Captain Lorca had a tribble. So they all had their own little things. Just had to show that because I just thought, well, you know William Shatner's thing about wearing a toupee. I mean, everybody talks about his toupee. Okay, now, other exotic aliens?
This is going out to the audience. Right up here in front.
A Horta.
A Horta.
Yes.
One of my favorites.
What do you like about the Horta, Jen?
That was just such a great episode. And it kind of like exemplifies a lot of what Star Trek is about. Being aliens that are totally non-humanoid and, at first they think that they're bad and they're trying to kill them, and then they realize that they're really not bad and they're just trying to exist.
A mother protecting her babies. Yes.
Yeah. And then there were some great, this is a novel verse, they're not canon, but some great stories about some quartet joining Starfleet. It was pretty cool.
Yes, that was cool. Oh, and also, as someone mentioned one time, a Horta was in the Star Trek beauty pageant here. Was it 1 or 2 years ago?
And I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
My name's Anthony. I live nearby, I think it was the first episode to actually air. So ignoring the pilot that got made in an Azure later, I don't remember if they even gave it a name, but the alien that lived on salt. Which, by the way, like, justice for the salt monster, like, it killed because it was literally starving to death. They could have just fed it salt tablets and it wouldn't have eaten anybody.
Why didn't they think of that?
But, it was one of those things that it seemed like that, we talk about exotic aliens. It had to die because it could take a manipulative form to hide its ugliness. And that's how we knew it was bad, and that was an irredeemable killer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the idea that something that's evil is ugly as well. That's one of our prejudices, yes.
Yeah, Salt Vampire, M113 creature. Another awesome one.
So we are going to show some more. Any other ideas? Mm-hmm.
Did we ever learn more about Morn species in books or anything?
I don't recall. I don't think so. Morn, that's interesting, yeah. I think there have been books about him, but I don't know if they really explored him anymore, though, just because they kind of wanted to keep him a mystery, I think. Denebian Slime Devil. I think this was from one of the Fossa books, right? They never actually showed it, but they mentioned it several times on
one
the
of the
original.
non-canon books, but we've heard the name before.
It's in Tribbles.
Mm-hmm. Correct, in that episode.
Yes. So now you have an idea of what it might look like. Oh, and Trelane. We he doesn't, I guess you could say he does look exotic, doesn't he? The way he dressed. Widely believed that he was a Q. He did appear in some of the novels, and compared to Liberace, right? I haven't really heard that he was based on Liberace, but the look and the way he acted, the flamboyant style, it does look like he was based on that. Spock's pet, the Sehlat. This is from the animated series, but he was mentioned on the original series. They said Spock had a pet Sehlat.
We got a hand down here in front.
Yeah.
We got a microphone there? Oh,
Yes.
there you go.
I wanted to go back to two things. The alien you showed, I think 3 slides back.
Mm-hmm.
You said showed up in the book. I also think the alien showed up in the animated series. the same animated series where the Tribbles appear.
Was it the Denebian slime devil?
Yes, and in that particular episode, the Kirk transports the Tribbles to the Klingon ship, and then sends the.
Oh, that's the Glommer. That's the Glommer.
Okay. Well, it was a little similar. I'm getting
It does look almost like a derivative of the Glommer, though. I can see that. Yeah.
But in terms of other exotic aliens, Elon from Trails. I don't know if you guys.
Oh, Alon, yes.
Yeah, where Kirk, she cries and Kirk falls in love with her, but she is supposed to marry someone else. It's like this whole diplomatic issue. And I just thought that, she's pretty exotic alien as well.
She's beautiful. No doubt about it. Sure.
And she had that exotic accent.
Yes.
And yes, and it was her tears, right? She cried and Kirk touched her tears, and that was like a pheromone that made him fall in love with her.
Right.
Yes. So the Sehlat again, Spock's pet. And little plant, Sulu called him Beauregard, and then Yeoman ran. Well, she said, I think it was like a female. I'm going to call her Gertrude. And I think the little plant purred too, didn't it? We could hear it make a sound. And here's the Warda. The Excalbian. Remember this episode? I threw in that, like, the Excalbian was this creature, right, that was made of lava, and it was the episode that presented these villains: Kahless the Unforgettable, Genghis Khan, Zorba the Greek, and Colonel Green.
Did you say Zorba the Greek?
Isn't that what they called her? That's what I remember.
Was it?
And the Telosians, again with the big heads, because they were these intellectuals. Oh, and of course now they've been re-shown on Discovery, and they look not exactly like their heads weren't really as big on Discovery, were they? And they were taller, yeah. And on this, these actresses, I mean, these are women here that played the Telosians, but on Discovery they got men to play them. And here we have the companion, something completely different. And the providers, that they were just these brains, but I believe they said they evolved, right? They used to be something more humanoid, and then they evolved into this. What was this? The episode Obsession, and so it was this creature, which I believe it destroyed every red blood cell in your body, right? And they said with Spock, it didn't like Spock as much. It didn't kill him like it killed everyone else that it affected. And they never really had a name for it. And then this one, I think even in the novels, right, they just gave it like a question mark instead of actually a name. And the Mugato, remember this? And we've also heard it was actually called the Gumato, but Dr. McCoy kept pronouncing it Mugato, so that's just, they changed the name so that DeForest Kelley could pronounce it correctly.
Anybody else remember where else this suit was seen, the Mugato suit?
I think it's the next slide, right? Does that look familiar?
The Lucy Show, Lucille Ball. And what's the connection?
She's the mother of Star Trek.
There we go. The mother of Star Trek, yeah.
She owned Desilu Studios where Star Trek was filmed. And I believe that was also the same actor in the suit, the Mugato suit. It's the same one that wore it in that episode, A Private Little War on Star Trek.
So it makes sense that the props department she'd have access to it.
Okay, we're going to this exotic alien, the Orions. And this picture was Vina, who wasn't really an Orion, right? This was just an illusion they created for Pike. So the Orions had green skin. No human male could resist Orion females, or so they say. In Journey to Babel, they secretly sent a spy in disguise to cause suspicion among the Babel delegates. Spock did say at the end, I believe you will find the spy to be an Orion, even though that was never really proven, but we would say, yes, Spock is probably right. Their espionage in Journey to Babel became the Orion Syndicate on Deep Space Nine. On Deep Space Nine, they talked about the Orion Syndicate several times, and we never actually saw them. We saw some members of it, So we think it came from the actual Orions. And that's been mentioned in the novel, too. They've had some things about the Orion Syndicate. Used in the fan film Lolani and in the movie Free Enterprise. Do you remember those? Lolani was a fan film that actually had Lou Ferrigno as an Orion, so he wore the green makeup again.
And he requested that he not be painted green. He said, "Could I be painted another color, please? I've played green so many years." And the producer said, "No, Orions are green." He said, "Okay."
Yeah, he had to do it that time. And Free Enterprise was an independent film that came out several years ago, and William Shatner played himself in it, and they did have someone that was sort of cosplayed an Orion in it.
Just as a note, until you described it, I was slightly confused. Lolani wasn't a fan film, like an independent movie. It did have Lou Ferrigno, which was great. That was fantastic. And it does have Kirk flying, kicking him in the chest, which, please go watch it. But it was an episode of Star Trek Continues. So that fan series is one of the episodes in there.
Okay, yeah, one of the series that Star Trek Continues did, yes.
Absolutely. And we went to the open house this year. It's just outside of Jacksonville, Florida. It's in Georgia, but they're having another one around Halloween time. So if you have the ability to go to the Star Trek Continues set, it's definitely worth the trip. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they have a recreation of the Enterprise, the bridge set, and several other things. They've got the decks, the hallways. They got auxiliary engineering, and they got engineering. They got sick bay. They got the meeting room, the rec room, and it's all exact replicas. It's cool. And here we go. Lou Ferrigno
as an Orion.
Orion males were typically taller and more muscular than the human males. And the Orion Syndicate had members of many races because it was a syndicate, right? O'Brien infiltrated the Orion Syndicate in the episode Honor Among Thieves, which is one of my favorite episodes of Deep Space Nine. And the remastered Orion ship in Journey to Babel. Remember the episode Journey where they showed, they didn't really show the Orion ship in that episode, but there was this ship that was moving fast, and so I was able to find a picture of it. When they remastered it, they just came up with this, even though it's still blurry, because it's still something that just goes by real fast. Hashtag slaves. Do you remember this, right? From Enterprise. Well, the top picture, of course, is from Whom Gods Destroy on the original series. The bottom picture is from Enterprise, the episode where they had the 3 Orion women, and then it turned out that the women actually control the men. They're not really slaves. We find out that the women have a pheromone, and so they were just pretending to be slaves, but they were actually the ones in control. So a modern update to the whole thing. And this is from another fan film, and the Orion woman here is our friend Leslie, who couldn't make it tonight, but she is here at the con. So she played an Orion commander in one of these fan films. This is The Crown Jewel of Xantharos, and it's made by Potemkin Films. And these are the Orions that were all in the same film. That is me on the far left up front. And we were a group of Orion dancers in this film. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I was very excited to do this film with them. And that's the only time I've been in Orion, but I loved doing that makeup. It was actually spray painted on, and it was very cold. So you have to and they had to put on 2 coats as well.
So that's something to check out, Potemkin Pictures. There's a series of fan films that are available free on YouTube.
And there's another one that we were in too, which I have to mention because you did a speaking part in one of them, A Gathering Storm. We do a lot of different cosplays, different aliens.
And thank you for joining us. We have swag up front. If you'd like a lanyard button, please come up front. We'd like to meet you as well. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.